Good afternoon. I suppose I'm going to just talk about our experience and my experience as principal of St. Paul's. And just maybe to set the context, I might give you a little bit of background on the school. We're a standalone, so we're the only secondary school in MONASTEREVIN. We're co-ed, we're Catholic, and the Bishop is the trustee. Our enrolment has increased massively over the last 8 to 10 years, coming from 200 to 445, 39 full-time teachers. We are restricted to less than a 2-acre site, so no green spaces. 18 of our 27 classrooms are prefabs, and 8 of them have been installed over the last 3 years. We are a DESH school, so disadvantaged, so high number of general cohort students with possession of medical cards, and a large number with special educational needs. We had a whole school evaluation in 2014, and the very first line of it states that this is a very inclusive school. And this is prior to taking any programme refugees into the school. So it fitted our profile, and we were only thrilled when we were asked, and delighted to give the opportunity to help. The success of the school is down to the hard-working staff on the academic side of things, pastoral care, and I think there's a particular pastoral focus in the school, and the provision of extracurricular opportunities for our students. We're blessed to have the support of the parents and the community, and we've 3 pillars that sort of underpin everything we're about, which is respect, do your best, and take pride in yourself, your school, your community, and your fellow students. So when we were initially approached about this, I suppose I should say that most of the students we took in were Syrian, as Jean mentioned. They were living in an orientation centre together, and we were very much told from the very get-go that this is you respect their privacy. So information was very, very limited on what we knew. We had dates of birth, and in case you didn't know, everybody in Syria is born on the 1st of the 1st. Occasionally we got a correct date of birth, I think. So it was very difficult to actually work out students' age. We had no idea of their educational attainment. We had what their parents told Jean, I think. We had no idea of their ability in English or even in Arabic. It was impossible to plan because of the length of the stay. We were told 12 weeks, but in some cases that went on to 14 months. But some of the challenges initially we just discussed and I suppose considered was, firstly, we're a Catholic school, and how that would fit in to predominantly Muslim Syrians. How we could communicate sort of the schools, what the school wanted, what the parents expected. We had no similar experience. So unlike other schools, I suppose, maybe in the state, we didn't experience an influx of maybe Eastern European migrants back during the boom time. So we had no experience we had no EAL provision in the school prior to this. The next thing was the application process. Our transfer application form, really was defunct. References from their previous school, educational attainment, last subject studied, all of those things that would normally form part of a transfer policy, our document were not suitable. Then we thought about how would we teach them, and who could teach them, and how could we learn, how could they learn best. What appropriate timetable would be suitable for a vast range of abilities, a vast range of ages. We had concerns around integration. So, the community were very much kept in the dark regarding, the change of use for the hazel, as everybody calls it locally. So they didn't realise that this was, until it sort of was upon them, that this was happening. And I think that's all part of the sort of nature of these AROC centres. And the physical limitations of our own school, spaces in classes, and et cetera, et cetera. So how do we respond? Well, firstly, we I suppose to communicate what the school ethos was, we needed to arrange a meeting with the parents and inform them what we wanted or what we could offer, and make sure that they were eyes wide open as regards wanting their child to be enrolled in the school, even for that temporary period of 12 weeks. And we were, I suppose, Jean coordinated. We'd have an interpreter or translator to do that for us. Our main focus was to make it a positive experience. You know, what can you achieve in 12 weeks? You know, we wanted them to experience warm welcome. We wanted them to give them as much English language support as we could. We wanted them to integrate with our own students. We wanted them to experience, you know, get a flavour of maybe the subjects that they would be asked to choose when they go on to their host schools and host towns. How could we make this possible? We applied to the Department of Education for additional teaching resources, and we needed to be further supported by letters from the OPMI, from Jean, and phone calls back and forth. Eventually we got half a teacher to accommodate it, and then, you know, as the numbers grew and we I suppose went back and back again, we then got a full-time teacher. What did we do with this full-time teacher? We dedicated 2 members of staff who were not on full, not that they had English as a subject, or, you know, one was an art teacher, one was a maths teacher, but they volunteered to go and get themselves trained in EEL, so we got them trained as quickly as possible, and they came back to provide, you know, they were going to be the ones educating the Syrian students. We then had concerns. I suppose we had to work out what their academic ability was of the students, and the age-appropriate classes. So, and again, with sort of hit and miss date of births, and, you know, just looking at a student, you could tell that they'd life experiences that maybe I hadn't even had myself at that stage, that, you know, they needed to be in older classes, some needed to be in younger classes, and putting them in classes, it was that appropriate as well. So there was an awful lot of sort of initial sort of quick assessments and sort of, you know, just making ad hoc decisions based on no information. So we assessed the students using the Wigan EAL and sort of gave us a sense of where they were along, you know, being able to access the curriculum, because there was no point in putting them into classes where they would have absolutely struggled to understand anything that was going on. However, some were capable, and some of them had higher levels of English, and some had been educated, you know, clearly had received a lot of education in Syria. Others had received none, in my opinion. We discovered problems such as never holding a pen before, teaching them to read from left to right rather than right to left was an issue as well. No letter identification in Arabic, not to mind English. So, you know, it was a wide range of difficulties that we encountered. And a workable timetable, something that would work for them. And the decision we made was that the 12, 13, 14-year-olds would go into first year, where possible, and the older students would go into TY. The reason for that is, I suppose, the first year we had space, firstly in our first year classes, and TY was a far more social environment, and maybe for that period, again, we were working on the premise they're only with us for 12 weeks. So on that premise that, you know, for 12 weeks, if they were in transition year, maybe they could socialise a bit more, they could engage, and they learn an awful lot from their Irish peers as regards language skills and just becoming comfortable in the language. Our focus was English and maths, so we withdrew the students for English and maths intensively. So they might receive 3 EL maths or English classes and maybe 1 or 2 maths classes per day, and then we would put them into practical subjects: music, home ec, woodwork, technical graphics, music. So we put them into those classes because the English language skills were not as intensely required as they are in the more practical subjects of history, geography, business, religion, and all of those. Okay. Every time we got new students, which could be, you know, thrown upon us on a Friday, that were ready to go again with some more, we had to look and change our curriculum and change the timetable. What were our learnings? Firstly, the children were no different, as Jean said, no different. She mentioned they got excited about their uniform. They were excited to come to school. They had the same needs as the Irish students had. Some were social, some were more introverted, some were sporty, some weren't. Some like to complain, others like to get on with it. But that's just the nature of young people, and they're amazingly resilient. Key is to keep the staff and the general cohort informed. So I think that was a real key to us. Before they started, we had assemblies where it was laid out to our own students, these children will be coming and joining the school, and we don't know what sort of level of life experiences they've had, but needless to say, they're depending on us to give them the warmest welcome possible, and et cetera. And I think the students of our school bought into that, and certainly that would be my assessment anyway. To evaluate the programme regularly would be key as well. Integrate where possible, and what I mean by that is not just the classes. It's when there's opportunities, cultural opportunities, or specifically Irish opportunities. Get them out there and give them that experience, Stand on the side of a pitch and watch a hurling match. Send them to the Dáil Éireann with the 5th year class. Send them on an art museum trip, okay? We did all that from within our own funding. There was no cost to them. We just felt that these were cultural opportunities that we couldn't let slip by. And we realised as a DEIS school that we do receive more funding, and maybe it was easier for us to do than other schools might have. But anywhere at all possible, our homeschool community liaison organised community nights where we had Irish dancing and Irish music, and similarly the rest of the time then was with Syrian dancing. The parents absolutely embraced this, and the children, and they got up and they danced to Syrian music coming from their phones and so on. So it was a huge learning experience for us in the community and the school. We converted a store into a dedicated classroom, but that is the nature of our school. We've no space. And it's an embarrassment, I suppose, really, to one of them commented they had better facilities back in the refugee camp in Lebanon than they had in the school. But they are the sort of conditions our own students are living in as well. So it wasn't, but that's all we could do. Initiatives such as paired reading, and our experience was paired reading with themselves did not work. So matching a higher level ability in Syrian student in English with a maybe student who's struggling did not work, but pairing them with our own students worked much better. They reverted back to Arabic most of the time when we tried it the first way. They were always asking questions in Arabic to the more able English speaker. So we paired them up with our TYs for some paired reading 2 or 3 times a week, and that had huge benefit. But not only that, now they had another familiar face within the school to smile at, or to ask them directions or whatever within the school. I mentioned the community and cultural opportunities, and we also linked in with Maynooth Primary, post-primary, who have had Syrians there a long time, and they've been through the education system, and it was wonderful for our students to get an opportunity to meet up with the Syrian students who had experienced, who were in 6th year, who had done 6 years or in their 6th year of second level, maybe came with no English, and now they were going into Civil Leaving Cert, to show them that there is possibilities there. But this was all, we had to do all this ourselves. Nobody told us that this is the school you should be going to, okay? So none of this actually was guided by anything that we were informed from the Department of Education. This was all learning for us as we went along. What could we have done better? And I mentioned that. The stronger English speakers with the weaker, that did not work. Involve parents more. Difficult with communication issues. But I think, some parents came into it thinking that, that over the 12 weeks we were going to make a significant impact on their child's education. And, that was unrealistic. The others just wanted them to be in school. I'm sure there were issues that came up in school that we never heard about because of the language barrier. English-speaking parents would have been into the school in a shot to find out what happened, and so I'm sure there was issues there. Although most of the students we saw every day were happy and smiling, and I suppose that was the key for us. We communicated that to the parents on day one. That as long as your child is happy to come, and their attendance was excellent. They attended every day. Except on a Friday. And we didn't know that the mosque in Portlaoise ran on a Friday, and Of course, and there was a bus provided, and we didn't realise other days that there was swimming lessons organised. We didn't realise this. This was all organised through the centre, not communicated back to the school. So, we had teachers waiting and to engage in the usual classes, but the students weren't there. I suppose one other thing we possibly didn't quite nail down with all the students is how was their ability in comparison to their application. So what I mean by that is some had amazing ability and poor application, and others had not great ability but amazing application. Now, I would tell any parent, any teacher, any student, I take the second one over the first one any day of the week. Those that apply themselves, because you can really make progress there. Maybe the higher ability Syrians sometimes, felt maybe that it wasn't challenging enough. I don't think so, though. I think they just felt superior to their peers because they could interpret for them and interpret whatever way they like for them. Okay, not necessarily the facts, but the way they wanted it interpreted. I think we could have tailored our application form much better in hindsight. And the use of technology to support language development. I think there's probably a range of really appropriate apps and programs out there that we didn't really use, perhaps due to the limitations of our facility and no Wi-Fi and so on. They all had phones, all the students had phones. And we did allow them to use it as a sort of a translation device, but it could have been used much better than that, in hindsight. What we wish we'd known, how much schooling they had, their academic ability and their level of English. It would have been wonderful if they'd been tested prior to us by something, a robust sort of testing process, so we knew and we could perhaps plan better. Any learning, behavioural or health difficulties, so we didn't know the full range of difficulties that students would have. Parents didn't want to maybe say them at the when we talked to them initially, for fear maybe their child might be excluded or it might create difficulties. So we had students with sight issues, hearing issues that we weren't aware of, and we had to uncover ourselves. We had students with behavioural difficulties we weren't aware of. We had students with special educational needs difficulties we were not aware of. So I think a body of work could really take place prior to entry. Was there any family member that spoke English? It would have been a wonderful thing to have, because the translation issue was significant. Any relevant family or personal issues. So sometimes there was events or altercations or whatever that happened down in the centre that manifested itself in the school, and we were not aware of maybe what had happened. Normally we'd always tell parents of our own, the parents of the school, if there's something happened at the weekend, it might affect your child's ability to engage with the curriculum or behave on the Monday, please let us know so we can put it together and be planned and ready for it. But there was no information coming. In fact, information was, there was no communication really. And where to access support in educational matters, and I mentioned that already, we just didn't know where to access support. We were given one document, I think it was from City of Dublin, ETB, but it was more pitched at adult and non-English speakers than children. Advice for schools, be respectful of cultural differences. One of the first meetings I had, I then went and shook the hands of one of the mums, and that's created a huge sort of moment for them. You shouldn't do that. I didn't know. Now she took my hand, and which was afterwards that was the problem. Okay, it can be a wonderful experience for all, and I mean that sincerely. I believe it highlights, it brings out the best in the Irish students as well, and I have nothing but positive things to say about it, despite all difficulties. Integrate appropriately. So just because they are of the age where they should be in 6th year, that's sometimes not the appropriate place to have them for their English ability. And 6th year is an exam-focused year. It's not a place to stick somebody who's just arrived in the country, who needs to develop those English language skills. Promote inclusion amongst the school partners. it'd be good to know what's been organised externally. And I mentioned the mosque, and I mentioned the swimming and trips to the library, and just trips, family trips that we weren't told of, and just an entire bus load. Sometimes I'd be driving past the hotel in the morning on the way to school, and I'd see a bus, and I go, I wonder, are they going to be here today? And issues in the centre, okay? Maybe policy implications then was, I think is my last slide. Yes, it is. It'd be wonderful if we had somebody to translate our policies, school policies, code behaviour, admissions policy, bullying policy, and so on. So the parents can access them if they're capable, or somebody can access them and communicate them to the parent. It'd be wonderful if there was pre-entry English assessments done for the students, but through a robust sort of system. Pre-entry coming from those English assessments, there could be an opportunity to get pre-entry educational assessments and health assessments. There should be a more dedicated response from the department as regarding providing teaching resources when they know that these students are coming in. It shouldn't be the case. They should be contacting the school saying, what can we give you, rather than the school saying, what can I have? And the training should be provided by the Department of Education, not provided by the school, for the teachers who are going to be assigned to these students. Testing material. So how do we gauge progress? What testing material do we use? Is there a better than the one we're currently using? Regular access to a translator would be hugely beneficial. Reporting templates for the host schools. It's distressing for us that we put so much time and effort into the students. We give them, we create a little report at the end of it, just based on their English language skills, their math skills, and generally an advice for the new school that they're going to. And we are never requested it from the new schools that are taking them in their host towns. There should be a template where you complete it, and it's automatically fed to the department or fed to somebody and then on to those schools. Just finally there, the funding for other learning experiences, that would be wonderful as well, because there's so much more than just the English and the subjects to be gained from taking in these students. They should be given every opportunity to participate in Irish society the same way that our own students are. And if we had the funding to provide them with more learning opportunities, it would be just great. Thanks very much.